Hello and welcome to the Say Yes Movement podcast with Heather and John. It's me. Um, we're here to help you with your professional and personal growth, helping you say yes to all the scary stuff. Hey, Heather, how are you doing today?
Good morning, John. Oh, it's a cool, breezy day, but I am happy to be here with you, happy to be with all of our listeners. And just like every Friday, we end the week with reframing our brains, and talking about what actually made a big impact for us this week. We
Mm.
call it our Friday moments. So, John, think about what your Friday moment is for all of our listeners out there. You know, we want to hear from you. So, put it in the comments and let us celebrate with you. So, John, what are you celebrating this week?
Yeah, no, this week has been a really good week, actually. A lot of new conversations that have happened, new relationships that I've been building, new clients that I've been talking to. So I'm super happy with that. But yeah, the big one again, I'm going to say this, and I might sound like a bit of a broken record, but consistency, right? Like getting my training
Mm.
in. I'm in two. For those of you that are following along, week 2 in my training program for the Ironman 70.3 that's coming up in June of 25. When I think about how far out that is, it's not that far. It's just around the corner. It'll be here soon. So I've been consistent with that, and just doing the stuff I love to do. And what I'm really proud of and celebrating this week is I'm going to be launching my next 30-day reset into next week. I had my webinar on it yesterday, and if those of you that want to watch the replay, I can share that with you. But it's been a really, really busy, great week. How about you, Heather? What are you
Wow,
celebrating?
John. You know what I love about all of that is that all of it is in service of others joining with you and creating a community. And isn't that one of those powerful, life hacks that we don't need to do any of this alone? So
Mm.
you sign up for your Ironman alone, but then you're like, the community is going to be with you on the journey and you're inviting all of us. So thank you, John. I'm excited for the journey to be on it with you. And of course, we all need a reset at any time for our health, our wellness, our mindset. We can always just press the button right today and say, all right, today is a day for reset. So thank you for sharing that. For me, I have so much to be thankful for, so much impact. I got a chance to travel abroad with a couple winners of their best year ever. And a couple of
Nice.
the people hadn't traveled before. So, imagine seeing the world through eyes of people that are seeing things for the first time. It's
Mm.
just such a magical moment. You see that twinkle in people's eye. And then there's another fun thing. So next week, I am speaking at GTAC, the Greater Toronto Contact Center. Sangeeta, thank you for that opportunity. And they do some amazing work with all kinds of organizations that are local. And what they do is they collect backpacks that are filled with all kinds of goodies for everyone that needs those backpacks. And so, my team is supporting that. We've got 40 backpacks getting filled. It's just going to be an amazing, amazing event. So I think the other thing that community can do powerfully is band together for the greater good, and there's nothing better than being of service to others from my perspective. So there's a lot to be celebrating this week, really, and lot to look forward to as well.
Yeah, no, that's wow. And I remember the backpack initiative, and I think it's a wonderful project, and it's for people in need, right? So, yeah, I love it. I love that you and your team are coming together to do that, and you just kind of prompted something for me. So I am going to save that for another episode, but giving back to the community, or especially this time of year, right? By the way, happy November 1st, everybody.
Right.
We are into what I would consider the last run of the year, right? Like this is where we really get to close things off. And as I start to think about how do I want this year to end, it's part of the reason why I'm launching the reset, because it's an opportunity to get ahead of 2025. Because we're all, this is the time. And actually, I think November, for me personally, I love it as a way of resetting for the next year, kind of figuring out what is next year going to start to look like now? And how can I get
Mm.
started today versus, starting in January 1st when everybody else, and then, I think 85% of people, in January, um, kind of wean off like their resolutions and goals 3 weeks in. So why not start now? And then this way you've got a head start. And I love Head
And
Start too.
this is year end for a lot of companies. It's people are doing their year end reviews. And for me, for year end reviews, you can't change the past. So take the lessons from the past and cut and paste your own success patterns into the future. But the other piece that comes up is people are ready for maybe their next career move. They're wondering, how did they get support and sponsorship from their boss? And John, there's a question that you get asked all the time in your coaching sessions. And, why don't you share the question and also what your answer is?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say good morning, Nicole. Welcome. And I think you had a big celebration this week too. I saw on LinkedIn somewhere. So share that with us. Share it with the community here. Yes. So going back to you, Heather, the question I get asked is, how do I build my impact and influence inside the organization? When I'm working with people, it's usually because they're starting to plan out their career in terms of the next level and what they need to do to get to that next level, whether it's growing in scope of their portfolio within their roles, getting to the next level, manager, senior manager, director, general manager, whatever that role is inside the organization. And the big thing is really creating impact and influence. And I know it sounds a little bit funny, but one of the things I tell them to do is, start working with the people you already know. And I know it seems like a really obvious thing. It's like, what do you mean? Start with the people I know. Start with the people you know. And I'm going to I coined the phrase, but I'm taking I was stealing a moment from the movie The Matrix, the original Matrix. If anybody remembers it, I call it Chasing the White Rabbit. And if you're not familiar with Neo, the way Neo, the main character in the movie, how he gets introduced into the Matrix, if you've watched it, is through the White Rabbit. Because he gets this little prompt on his screen that says, follow the white rabbit. And the white rabbit leads him to Trinity, and then it leads him to Morpheus, and then leads him into the Matrix. And when you chase one thing and you just kind of follow it and kind of say, and it's kind of like when you say yes, chasing the white rabbit is like saying yes to all the things that show up where you would normally say no. And that's where your life really starts to transform. Now, in the influence and impact arena, the way I use it inside of an organization is, start with the people start with people who have similar values, who could potentially be mentors. And then after those, what I call informational sessions, is ask them who you should be connecting with next. And they will lead you to the next person, right? And then at the end of that conversation, who do I need to talk to next? Based on what you know about me, based on what my goals and ambitions are, who do you feel I should talk to next? And that'll help you build up your network of people that are, for the most part, have the same values, have the same system, like the same values. The way they view the world are very similar to you. So,
John, I'm just going to add one little piece. You asked the question, who should I connect with next? But be purposeful and clear and very limited time. I've had people connect with me and then, almost, and I hate to say it, but vomit their entire resume to me when they're not even asking of what I need. And I'm not sure what my role is or what they need me to play. And so, that you have to be really careful how you're curating those relationships. And so, it's really good to practice with either a coach or a boss around who should I connect with next? And then how will I land my brand effectively? And, that's another question that I often ask people is, what is your brand in your organization? And, people, they recoil back like, my brand is, and they tell me what they want it to be. And it's often a disconnect between what they want it to be and what it actually is. And there's a question that you can ask someone that's very close to you, maybe a coworker, maybe your boss. And the question is, what would you say about me if I wasn't in the room?
Yeah. Well, actually, let me add just a couple of things to what you just mentioned. Number one, when you are doing those sessions with people, those informational sessions, and actually, you know what, I use this with you, right? When I first met you for the first time, I said, Heather, do you have like 15 minutes where we could just sit down and you can talk about that Steve Wozniak, meet where you met with them, right? For the most part, 95% of people will say yes to 15 minutes. In some cases, you're waiting longer in line for a coffee, than you would for a 15-minute conversation. So, never ask for more than 15 minutes because everybody's time is precious. Everybody else is busy. And here's one thing that I catch a lot of people doing, right? They don't send the invitation because they think other people are busy and they don't have time for them. and they're rejecting themselves before the other person gets to say no. And that's not fair, right? It's not fair to the other person.
Let me add another piece to that,
Yeah.
John. There's many people that have connected with me, and then they start with saying, I know you're really busy. And so they're discounting my gift of time to them, and they're discounting themselves at the same time. So if you've ever said that, please stop immediately. Get right to the point and say, here's what I would love to get out of this moment in time. I have one burning question for you, and here it is. Just get right to it.
Yes. So no more than 15 minutes. Know what you want to ask, and don't make it about you. Ooh, right? Because it's not about me. Like you
Wait a
just
minute,
said.
John. That's crazy talk.
Yeah,
Don't make it about you. You
don't
want
make
your
it about
brand
you.
to be.
Listen,
you want your brand to be like. Don't you have to tell them everything about yourself?
No, not at all.
That's
not
right.
in the first go. Not in the first sit down. Listen, I didn't do that with you.
No.
You know, when I think about how we first met, my first quiet, like, tell me about that Steve Wozniak situation. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. The whole conversation, Heather, was about you.
It was about you. It was about me, but it was about what you were interested in. So at the same time as you were being curious, your body language was talking to me, your smile, your interest, your eye contact, all of those things were creating a persona that you were a person of connection, a person of curiosity, and a person that wants personal growth. So I got all of those messages with minimal words and questions and your interaction. And so I think that's what people miss, is that they think the words, that if I say all of these things, people will think something. And in fact, it's your actions and your nonverbal that is the most loud in those first 15 minutes with someone, in the first 2 minutes with someone.
Yeah, well, especially when you're sitting in the room with Heather, you feel like it's voodoo, right? So I'm like, how do you know that? It was, and I think about it, like these informational sessions should never be about you spitting out your resume, spitting out your skill set, spitting out everything about you. Build the connection first, right? Like you have to establish rapport, you have to make that connection. You have to get the person needs to feel like they can like and trust you. And that doesn't happen by you talking about yourself.
That's right.
So, and when they think about who they want to introduce you to next, because you're going to ask the question, who do you feel I should connect with next? They're going to think about, is this person the right person that I want to introduce to others? Do they represent what I feel, they have and need that would, be of value to others? And here's the thing, you're actually offering value by asking questions, because it prompts, and it, in our minds, I love it when people ask questions, because people love talking about themselves, but it also helps me remember the things that I actually know, the things that I've gone through, my experiences. And it's like, oh yeah, you know what? Ooh, I do know that. And this is what the whole reason I got into neuro-linguistic programming, Heather, is because you talked about it, and at the end of our conversation, which by the way, lasted an hour and a half, not 15 minutes. 15 minutes was the foot in the door, but it lasted an hour and a half. And I remember Heather's like, I think I got to go now. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. But, throughout our conversation, always make sure you're taking note of what's being said. And actually, I always bring a notebook with me. And then I asked, out of all the things that you've shared with me, what is the thing that I should bring up to the top? What's the number one thing I should focus on? And you're like, you need to do this NLP thing. I'm like, okay. So I went out, I did my work, and what creates a really good, mentor coach or mentor relationship, coach relationship, is giving that feedback back to the person that gave it to you in the first place. Right? Like that's how you continue the conversation. That's how you continue the relationship. Because that's exactly what I did with you, right? Like there's nothing, everything I'm talking about is what we did. And this is how we landed on a podcast years later. And
that's right.
150 episodes later, after delivering, a workshop and delivering an in-person speaker event, like all these things happened because I had the courage, I had the confidence to say, hey, do you have 15 minutes to sit down? I'd love to learn a little bit more about you.
Right? It's incredible, when you make a connection on a personal level and on something that matters to both of you. And so, and I literally got a text this week. One of my, old mentors to myself, but also the other way around, sent me a text. And I love this text. It says, hey, you popped into my head, your voice, I heard your voice in my head. I took the advice from years ago that you gave me just recently. I'll tell you about it later. So I have this open loop for what was the advice, what was the piece, but what it activated for me was a remembrance of all of the amazing conversations that we've had over the years, but also replaying some of the advice that I've given. And by the way, everyone, when I give advice or when I give coaching or when I ask questions, it's probably because I also needed those answers at some time in my life, because that's how we get to be really good coaches, is we're curious about how we show up in the world and use our own experiences to, shape the questions that we ask. So whatever the advice was, that person has used it now, and I'm excited to hear what the outcome is. So
Yeah.
don't discount the questions you ask today will still resonate years later with the people that are truly listening to you. And that's a magical shared moment.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I just wanted to take a second, and Nicole put her celebration in the comments here. So she's celebrating 8 years with BNS this month. At this time, BNS has provided opportunities for me to grow in character,
Yes.
develop competencies, and recognize my strengths and opportunities.
I love that.
Way to go, Nicole. That is a great celebration. And anytime you're spending any amount of years with any organization, it's a gift for both sides, right? So, congratulations. But going back, Heather, to what you said, there really is an opportunity to just give the gift of listening and understanding, right? And I love that in these relationships that we create, because the truth is, I never knew that this was the path that we were going to go down.
No,
right?
never.
That was never the intention. The intention was just you're doing a lot of cool stuff that I like. I'm like, I'd like to do a little bit of that. Well, let's go find out and let's get some information. And I remember you saying, just, let's keep the door open. And, we actually created, and then, this is the other thing that I share with the people that I'm working with, especially now, as you continue to grow and build your influence, you have to have a regular cadence. This is why it's so important to listen and, take the advice, give the feedback, because that gives you an opportunity to follow up. In our case, you shared the NLP thing with me. I signed up for the course. I got back to you, I think, a week or two later. I'm like, hey, I signed up for the course. Can I bounce things off you as I'm going through the course so we can keep the conversation going? And you're like, yeah, to be a great refresher, great reminder for me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah. And that just led to like a regular 6-week cadence. I think we would meet on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. just before we got our day started. And that's what we did for like almost a year and a half, 2 years.
Well, and I think, I just want to break that process up a little bit. If you are a leader or you are meeting with someone that is a subordinate or has some confidence issues, and when they ask for your time, one of the things that you can say is, you know what, absolutely. And here's what I'm going to learn from you as well. So if you want to pump somebody up, you want to do it and be honest with it, but you want to say, this is not me giving my time and you learning. This is a interaction that we're both going to learn from. And so, you might say, you know what, I would love to spend that time, because you might even spark me to remember some of the stories that would be of value to even more people. So you can find a way to shape it so that person then walks away going, wow, like I feel like I made an impact. And, the world needs to feel seen and heard. People need to feel seen and heard, whether it be in the workplace, in your family life, in your friends. And I think, when you think about that, we all can give the gift of time. And so I want you to think about, this is your call to action. I want you to think about one person that you want to book a coffee date, a 15-minute chat with, and give them feedback on how they've positively impacted you. And then also, what's one question that you want to ask them? It may be about your brand. It may be about how you can be more impactful and influence. What do they see as your strengths? And what do they see you doing some amazing work in 2025? Those are just some questions. Don't ask all of those questions. Ask one or two of those questions. But this is the way to go. And this is so, so powerful, especially as you look ahead into, the next year that's happening right around the corner. At the end of 2025, what do you want to be celebrating? That's the question to ask yourself today.
Yeah. And actually, just one more thing to add to that. How do you want to finish 2024? We're 8 weeks from the finish line. How do you want to finish 2024? Heather, great advice. And actually, somebody asked a question about what's your advice on where the conversation doesn't go well. Well, you're going to have to listen to next week's episode, and we'll include that as one of the conversations. But yeah, sometimes conversations don't necessarily go well, and we'll cover that.
You know what, Judd? Let's not close. I don't want to leave that open loop. So, when the conversation doesn't go well, journal about it. Write down what happened. What did you say? What happened to the other person? And don't take it personally. They may be running to a meeting. They may be thinking about something that just happened. That just means that connection isn't for you. That isn't for your growth, and move on to the next person. But you need to journal what happened, because there might be some clues in there, and then talk to a coach and say, I asked these questions and I didn't get the answers I was looking for. I didn't get the response I was looking for. And just take it as a moment of learning. It happens all the time to all of us.
All right, Heather, you took it away from our next week's episode, so we'll have to come up with something different. But great advice. Listen, it's so important to just reflect on the moment and think about where you could have been different, right? And and I bring this into my coaching conversations. It gets what happens if it doesn't go well. It's okay. Sometimes you're not always going to resonate with 100% of the people, so you just like Heather said, think about what you can do differently, and then think about where you want to take that next conversation and how you might approach it differently. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Say Yes Movement Podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, and thank you for all your participation in the chat. We love it when you comment. So next week, share your comments with us. That is it for us today. Just remember, when you shift your mindset, you shift your life. Wishing you all a fantastic day. Talk to y'all soon.